Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to Raising Excellence, the most important hour of your week these days. Hi, I'm Michael, the Opportunity Ambassador and MC for today's show. And today's show's title is Your Choices Suck, signed Intuition. With me today are my favorite co-host, Agnieszka, my favorite psychosomatic illuminator. How are you today?
I am very well. Welcome, everyone.
And Dennis, our freedom facilitator.
Blessed love and greetings, everybody. And sorry for the darkness. We're working on shedding some light on ourselves in this minute. If you cannot see us yet.
We're just ghosting it at the moment. So, as ghost, what is the problem here when it comes to people making poor choices? Man, they're all over the place. People are making bad choices left, right, and center. What's going on?
Well,
Anybody want to talk about the problem?
I want to talk about the problem. I think the problem is that people forgot who they really are. Inside each and every one of us, there is a guidance, a guidepost. There is a truth meter, so to speak. There is an innate wisdom that is millions of years in the making. And in this day and age, we seem to have forgotten the inner wisdom, forgotten the guideposts that we are all born with, and sold our soul to the devil. Essentially, I mean, really, what else can you possibly call it other than selling your soul to the devil? Listening to all of this propaganda and not keeping your own counsel. I mean, it's like even written in the Bible to think for yourself. Why are everybody forgetting it? Why? Dennis?
Dennis, what's your thoughts?
Well, certainly. The choices that we make are certainly influenced by everything that is inside and outside of us. So I feel it is a very prevalent topic that we have today, and just to see the outcomes of the choices that we have made. If we consider that what we see, what we experience right now is really an outcome of the decisions that we made, of the actions that we took yesterday, and in our previous life and lives, if so be it, then wow, is there something that we can change? Is there something that we can do different right here and right now in order to have a better impact for everyone, for the next moment that we live and co-create together?
Well, I definitely think the problem has to do with where people choose to get their information from too, because in a lot of ways, being able to discriminate again from truthful truthful information and deceitful information is something that I think a lot of people have trouble with. And certainly when it comes to the vast majority of people, unfortunately, they're getting their information from sources that are totally unreliable. And then those sources are basically the ones that are also telling them, here's the fact check. And it leads to more disinformation. And so when it comes to like medical advice, for example, they're getting it from the wrong people. When it gets to like
but it's
legal
even
and
deeper
professional
than that.
advice.
It's even deeper than that.
Oh, it is.
The medical, like, they're making people think that they're not smart enough to think for themselves. They somehow have hoodwinked humanity into thinking that it's retarded and unable to think for itself and make its own decisions. I mean, even medical information is not that hard to decipher. You just have to, learn a few new words. It's not a big deal, but people make it out to be like you need to, yeah.
Well, Bernays said it in his book himself that the best propaganda device is like the media, the movies, stuff like that. And people are still stuck and, convinced that the entertainment is the place to get a lot of their information. And even though they don't necessarily believe all the things that they're watching, a lot of it is unconsciously being programmed into their heads when it comes to watching a lot of these TV show, or I guess I call them TV shows, but they're not even TV shows now. They're Netflix and YouTubes and stuff like that. But a lot of that media is kind of subconsciously programming a particular response to a lot of the stuff that they're thinking about. And so the thoughts that they're thinking aren't necessarily their own in a lot of cases.
So how can we cut through then? Because we see the problematic um, situation and reality, that is that comes out of that circumstance. And as the title hints, we're talking about intuition today. And if we have a programming going on, and if we are hijacked, if certain levels of us are being hijacked, and you're hinting about our cognitive abilities or disabilities, or how we have some weaknesses and how those are being used against us, and that certainly paints a picture of us being or of our capacities to a certain degree being hijacked and being used, our energy in a way being sucked away and being used for for purposes that are basically out of our control, because we're relinquishing the control of our abilities. And I would suggest that our mental cognitive abilities is great, potentially, but if we don't have influence, if we cannot make use of it, then wow, where does it go? And if you look around, maybe it goes to all the wrong things, or maybe it goes to things that we actually don't really want. And as the title of our show, Your Choices Suck, Signed Intuition, hints at, I think it would be a good idea to talk a little bit about intuition and to define it, because maybe intuition is one thing, or is the thing that is beyond the mind, beyond the cognitive abilities that we have. So like we have a logic, a reasoning capacity, the capacity of our mind, but if that is being hijacked, or if that is that maybe not the place, or not the only place to make decisions, or are decisions basically maybe made on a different level of our being, and and that's what I'm suggesting, is then our cognitive brain, our thinking mind, or what we associate with the brain, is that maybe only the translator that that brings in logic, that brings in the reasoning capacity, in order then to transform that which is in order to transform the decision that is being made on a deeper level into something tangible in the reality, in the perceived reality that we live in. So
I've got a few. Oh, go ahead.
So just talking about the word intuition, I know like we touched upon a little bit on Monday.
You can't unload that much information and expect to keep talking. I say I say you're going to hold on to that definition. Hold on to it.
You had something
I've
to say
got a
regarding
couple definitions.
The definition, wasn't it, Agnieszka? The word, the root of the word.
I have something to say that I think it's important about why we can't find our center. But I'd like to hear from Michael first.
Okay, so dictionary definition of intuition: two things: the ability to understand something immediately without the need for conscious reasoning, or the second definition, a thing that one knows or considers likely from instinctive feeling rather than conscious reasoning. So two things with conscious reasoning references.
Is that what you were going to read, Dennis?
Yeah, like in that, I have additional to that, I have insight, direct or immediate cognition, which is what Mike just said, I feel, and also spiritual perception. I thought that was really interesting. So it's something that goes beyond the physical, or just the realm of the mind. It goes into the spiritual, and originally or theological from late Latin intuitionem, a looking at or consideration. Yeah, that's what I do.
Yeah. So sorry.
I was just going to say that there's a couple other things. People define it as a sixth sense or clairvoyance are two other things, and I do think that part of your other extra senses that we don't necessarily.
Yeah, but those new things, it sounds so esoteric, like, oh, nobody could do that. Oh, it's clairvoyance. It's something outside of your realm of possibilities. Versus the first definitions you guys read were actually totally attainable for the regular Joe. You know what I mean? So let's stick with the definition that we can actually achieve, because I don't think intuition is something non-achievable. But I think that in our society, a lot of things that are, everyday things are considered to be best left to the experts. And, oh, you probably couldn't figure it out. You probably couldn't do it. You know what I mean?
I have a
But
little
what
quote
I
that
wanted to say,
cuts through that.
hang on. I wanted to say about something what you said before we even got onto the definitions, because you said something important about the Netflix shows. You said about the Netflix shows, Michael, and then Dennis said the thing about how we are lacking guidance. And I think I know the crux of the issue there. So the crux of the issue is that the media dismantles the myth. I wrote this down when I thought of this. The media dismantles the myth. The myth has been the guidepost, the thing that guides us throughout centuries, right? And knowing the myths of the culture will allow you to navigate it safely and to understand the meaning of things, listening to the old man, not going with the crowd. All of that is in the myth. But lately, Netflix and Prime and things like that have been sort of shifting these myths. And you can watch it, how some of the shows are taking sort of positive, uplifting myths and making them into dark and sinister ones. And it's very interesting. And I'm not sure why that is, but it's another tool to disempower the regular Joe.
I feel it's a
Yeah,
distraction. Sorry, go ahead, Mike.
well, go ahead.
So I feel what you're describing there and what we described earlier, it is a distraction um, away from the, the other two parts that we have as humanity. I feel not been focusing on. So I like to describe it as a trifold. Like there's three parts. There's our intuitive being. There's intuition. Then there's our heart. The heart, the loving energy, the emotional center, and then there's the cognitive logical center, in the brain, the mind. And those three, we have them for a reason. And I feel that those three have to be aligned and have to work in harmony. However, and that sounds really logically for me. If you look at the reality that we live in and the things that are happening, these are pretty much a reflection of just the cold logic mind, calculative thing, or it's, money runs things. It's not about feeling and love. It's not about intuition, from the gut, like knowing you do the right thing without having to logically being able to reason it out, but have a deeper knowing. That's not what we are guided by, not as individuals to a large extent, and much less as a society or as a community. And so I feel we are really being distracted. You're talking about the Netflix and all those distractions that we have. Those are distractions of the mind. So our mind is being hijacked, and it's being used to distract us from the fact that there's two other important centers that we have to consider in order to make proper decisions and the proper choices that lead us to advance on our path towards freedom.
Yeah, I would just say that it is kind of a divide and conquer where the intuitive people are being kind of demonstrated to be kind of these woo woo, like,
Ridiculed, made fun of, called science
and
deniers.
this, yeah, and at the same time, the other side, the logical people, are being, heartless SOBs that are just cold and calculating. And so, again, it's where we separate ourselves from the possibility of collaborating and learning from each other. We're just, devastating our potential to really understand what's actually going on. And so, like, being able to have those multiple perspectives, I think, are important for all of us to really get to the best conclusions and best decisions.
If you think about the hero's journey that happens in myth, right? Like it's a repetitious thing. It's a Joseph Campbell thing, right? It's not one myth, it's all the myths, right? There's a hero's journey. And the hero also always has to strike out on his own and learn on his own, learn from his own mistakes, and be able to really discern and decipher between what's right and wrong, what's good and evil, on his own. And that's what's missing in our society, where everybody has to rely on somebody else for determining. Discernment comes from outside. It's a very strange concept.
Carl Jung
Well, I
says,
do. Go ahead, Dennis.
sure.
We all got something to say on this topic.
I was just gonna throw in this quote because I thought, earlier, like we were maybe making it too complicated, but a few quotes that use down to earth words and principles to bring across what intuition is or how other people describe intuition. I think it might be helpful. And Carl Jung says intuition does not denote something contrary to reason, but something outside of the province of reason. And I think that's that sheds a little bit of light that also, yeah, there's the mind, there's the cognitive center, and then there's intuition, which is it doesn't have the need to compare itself to reason, to the reason capacity that we have, because it's a totally different, it's a different lawn. But it has its place, like the other two centers also have their place, and if we can align them, and we don't have to compare them to each other to make one seem like the other one, because each one of those three centers have their own unique capacities and abilities, and so it's like a team that needs to play together. So I think the art is how to make them, how to let them play as a team, and how to let each one of those play in the formation on the field, have the proper position. So each one of them has the right position on the field in order to be able to play um, at its peak.
Well, I was just going to comment on the hero's journey. Isn't it interesting that it is always kind of a singular kind of story that really kind of isolates people from the understanding of collaboration? I do know that the hero's journey does require like a mentorship and some bit of
Oh, no,
collaboration.
no, no. Wait. Because the hero's journey, like remember, there are always three heroes, two of them fail and one of them succeeds. And the one that succeeds is the one that chooses collaboration over self-serving. That's it. That's all I wanted to say.
I don't know about the hero's journey having three heroes. I don't know if
Like
that
there's
is
always
that
like
part of
in every
Joseph
fable.
Campbell's
No.
formula.
I mean, every hero goes on a hero's journey, but in every fable, there's always guys that go before the hero, right? Like the older brother goes first, or the other contender for the princess's hand goes first, right? And they fail. And then usually two or three fail, and then the hero steps up and he wins, right? And the difference between the guys that fail and the guy that wins is that the guys that fail deny help from an unlikely source. There's always an unlikely source, like a bird or an old man or an old woman or a talking animal or something weird that the regular guys will all go, oh no, you're weird, go away. I don't want to share my lunch with you. But the hero
So
steps outside of the norm, talks to the wild animal or the old woman, and learns the information that he needs in order to win.
I think where we can probably
well, I
agree on
think
is that there's some kind of destruction, that there's some kind of divide, some divide and conquer going on the outside, obviously, which is what we described earlier, which is a reflection of that what happens on the inside. So that's how I can make the connection to the hero journey right now. But so if you're talking about the source of the problem or the root of the problem being that division, or that you know playing of the players but not in unison, not as a team, but kind of divided, so that no one can really perform at its peak, or the players don't know, one player doesn't know what the other one is doing, or they're not communicating properly, then the solution for me sounds like, oh, how can we align those centers that we have, how can we align the qualities that we have inherited within ourselves in the field? And that is really the journey, that is the goal of this journey, in to come into balance within each one of those centers, but then also to align those centers as they are already, lined up on a string, on a column, even in our physical manifestation.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say the hero's journey is also kind of going into taking from the ordinary world and into the supernatural world. And it's usually that conquest of the supernatural world that actually leads to the learning and understanding that makes them the master of both worlds. And I would say that also kind of is that conquest of like the logical and the intuitive, that or the spiritual, or whatever you want to call it, world. I'll leave it there.
Yeah. So I will
I'm trying to be
suggest.
short and sweet.
So I'll put up this. I feel that because we're saying your choices suck, signed intuition. So that means say intuition is saying, hold on, the choices that are being made are not the right choices. Something's wrong with the choices. So from my perspective, it
Yeah, you
looks
got
like
like
this.
you got two wrong choices is essentially what you're being given. Is you're being given two wrong choices, and your intuition is probably going, I don't like these choices, but it's kind of like pushed back and stuffed in the closet.
I
And so in a lot of cases, people are like, the two choices are like the conditioned response is the one that like gets the yes.
if the intuitive center, the gut brain, I call it the gut brain, and we touched upon that I think on Monday. You know, the finding that even modern established science is finding out that there's actually more nerve endings in the so-called gut brain than in the brain in our head, which up to now or up to recently, supposedly has been the um, the space or the place where decisions are being made and where things are being reasoned out and so on. If it is the case that and that's what I'm suggesting, that the decisions actually are made in the gut and not in the brain, and that the decision, yes or no, left or right, or for whatever we choose, is actually already made in the gut, and is then being translated by the brain and by our analytical and cognitive abilities into actions that are then being taken. So that would mean say that the brain really is just a translator of the decision that is already being made, but the decision itself is not made in the brain. So the divide and conquer that I see, or the hijacking, is then that we are led to believe or led to think, which is again the brain already. So it's already cutting off the feeling, the knowing that is beyond like a book knowledge, a learned knowing, something that we cannot learn, but there's a knowing that goes deeper with that. So if we are cut off that connection to the gut, then we make our decisions only based on logic, based on, I don't know, school book, what teacher said, what mommy and daddy said, who also have not been taught about that, and then we have a world that resembles the one that we live in, which which has a few complications. So how can we then bring in, how can we become aware of the decision that we make in the gut of our, that never fails us, so we know which key to take from the keychain. We know, should we go this time to that place, or should we go this way or that way. How can we honor the decision that's being made, translate it in a way that it's tangible, for our world, for the reality that we live in, translate it into the right action, the right words, the way, the behaviors that we need in order to fulfill, our purpose, and in order to manifest, in order to follow that, the direction of the decision that is being made. And how can we then, in the third place, add the heart to it, and do it from a loving space, and do it from a from a positive emotional space as well. And we touched upon that, was it week before last week, about the different emotional levels that we have. How can we bring a love into everything that we do, and into who we are, and
I
realize that?
think that I think that all of those questions could just be one question. How can we remain in our center of power while making decisions? Right? Because no matter what, all the questions that you just asked, it's like, are you in balance or are you out of balance? Are you centered or are you off center? Are you making decisions from the place of knowing who you are and where you are and how you stand up in the world? Or are you making choices and decisions based on other people's experiences or other people's suggestions or people's guidance? And why is it that as a child, a 4-year-old, a 3-year-old does not feel that they require guidance, and they are super, super quick and easy to follow their inner knowing? And as an adult, we second, triple, quadruple guess every single thing we do because we no longer seem to be able to trust our gut, our intuition, our inner guidance that
That's
tells us, yes, this is right, no, this is wrong. It always talks,
that's so
it
funny.
never changes.
trust was exactly the word that came to my mind while you just were talking, and I was like, oh, Mike, you remember you talking about trust, and that's really to trust our inner self, you to trust that gut feeling, to say, oh, and that requires to listen to it, because if you have listened it to before, then you learn to trust it, because it doesn't tell you wrong, it tells you the proper thing. So that was interesting that you just voiced what went through my mind while you were talking.
I think one of the things we got to contend with is the short circuiting of the brain, and basically the fear response being the kind of the shutting off both the intuitive and the logical thinking, and really just being conditioned thinking. And there again is like that. We're off center. We're basically reeling back from whatever it is that we've has been the stimulus for the fear response. And because of that, we're not thinking, we're not feeling, we're not doing anything. We're being emotionally set off. And in a lot of cases, that's why it's the conditioned response is that, hey, you're angry, this is why.
It's
Boom.
called triggered, right? You're
Yeah.
triggering a program. So basically what happens is neurolinguistically, your brain has been programmed like a macro, right? This series of responses. And when you're in a certain situation, pressed against a corner, like, cornered, threatened, that macro will run its course. And often the macro was recorded in your childhood while you had no choice but you were just absorbing what's happening from the outside. And so as an adult, it behooves us to reobserve these macros and reevaluate them and see if that's what really serves us.
Shambhavi
Is this
commented ego, and I feel, like responding to what Mike also said, it is the conditioning that you're talking about. The conditioning is the conditioning of the mind. You can't condition the gut because the gut is there. So the conditioning of the mind can only come about because you're cut off the connection to the gut and the connection to the heart. And then that is the hijack that we mentioned earlier as well, and that can only happen if there's a disconnection. And then of course you can use the mind and recondition or unprogram the mind, but that doesn't necessarily mean that will give you awareness of the connection to the gut and to the heart. So unless you establish that connection, maybe it is actually, wouldn't it be much easier to learn how to connect to the heart center and to your gut, instead of spending much time and effort to reprogram and recondition the mind alone? And I don't say that that's bad. That's certainly important as well to get those things out. But I feel that reconnection to the other two centers, that is really what's essential in order to right away, basically you find solutions right away. Because if you're in that conditioned, what do you say, like Netflix conditioned situation, or in a stimulus response thing, in order to step out, like right here and right now, you can find out where your heart lies, and where you can be in love and in balance, and you can be centered in your gut. That's a possibility, I would argue, for everyone.
But how can you learn to trust your heart? Because your heart is always telling you the truth, the right thing. This is the right choice. This is the right answer. This is the right person. This is the right situation. This is the wrong situation, whatever. How can you learn? How can one learn to trust when all their lives, from childhood on, they've been told, no, don't trust your intuition. Don't trust your gut. Oh, it's all just imagination. Oh, you have such a vivid imagination, child.
I would say trust the gut, like you said in the end, not the heart. The heart is there
And
to,
how?
how to trust the gut. Oh, you can practice that just like you practice anything. You could use small things. You could use, like, I think I mentioned, like a keychain. Like you have a bunch of keys that look almost like the same, and every time you want to open your house door, it's like, oh gosh, like, am I gonna like search to 10 keys, or which one is it gonna be? Like little games like that. Or you can, I don't know, without like that kind of, put little challenges up on a day by day basis, and say, oh, I forgot where I put, I don't know, my gloves. Was it the left or the right part of the cupboard? What does my gut say? Just ask your gut. They say, like, ask and you shall receive answers. So it's I think those are like easy ways how you can kind of get into the habit, of not only like logically thinking about it, but just check with your gut, check with your heart. What what do I feel? You know, what's my resonance with this person right now? No? What do I feel right now? What kind of pictures do I get in my mind? What kind of feeling do I get in my chest? What's my gut saying? What's my stomach saying? And actually, it's interesting because language reflects much of that. So I'd be a little slower to find English proverbs or English ways of expressing that. But I know in German language, there's many things that we say on a day by day basis that actually hint at that. You know, whether when you're in love and oh gosh, like help me out, tell me something in English that you say about heart that connects to the heart, to your chest, or you know when you're homesick, for example, you know where do you feel it, in which part of the body? And I know Agnieszka, you're proficient in that, but our language gives away a lot, you know, about the centers and where and which part of our body actually is connected to the feelings, to the emotions that we have, but also to the thoughts and to the pictures that we're getting.
English has
Oh, yeah.
that too. Go ahead.
I do have that one about the key to a man's heart is through his stomach. Is that the right one? Is that a key to the?
It's true for women as
Yeah,
well.
but even
So
in
says my wife.
day-to-day conversation, like, how do you vibe with that? How does it feel to you? You know, there's so many different ways people talk, and they involve these kind of decision-making processes without even understanding that that's what they're saying.
When you're in love,
You
here
know,
you say in Germany you say you have butterflies in your belly. That's interesting as well.
stomach, yeah,
In your
same
stomach.
thing in English. Butterflies in your stomach. Yeah.
Well, I think there are some things that, like the fear response, and a lot of the even the physical responses to things like, and I'll go back to public speaking. You know, in a lot of ways, the like excitement can be uh, redirected as fear, and in a lot of when people are told that, oh, those responses to what you're doing is this, in a lot of ways, I think some of the physical things that happen to you can be misunderstood. And so in a lot of those cases, I think the first thing to do is really to like deaden the fear response or try and overcome the fear response. You know, my little secret about looking left and looking right, I think just having that moment of clarity to like say, okay, I've got a fear response here. I'm going to analyze this fear response. You know, I'm going to take a moment to think about this. Is this something that's real or is this irrational? By just doing that, I think you can stop a lot of the things that typically take place when people have that like triggered response. And if you can just step back from that for a few seconds, you can start to create the room that you need to look for other feelings and thoughts that might give you some other clues to some other things that might take place. I do feel like you need to be observant of like what is actually going on in yourself to really start to take that next step to understand that there might be other uh, stimulus, there might be other responses from your body that could be more accurate to what you've been programmed with.
And Agnesia, you used a word that hit the nail on the head earlier, discernment, and I feel that plays into it. The discernment, you know, whether something that you're processing right now or a decision that you're about to make or that you made already was made only here in the mind, or was it balanced and was there some kind of check, you know, with the gut
Or
and then with
even
the
the
heart as well.
discernment between two choices using your gut, right? But is this a good time to bring up the emotional guidance scale? Because I think that when it comes to developing your intuition, the emotional guidance scale is a really good tool. It can
Okay.
really help you, because often what happens with trying to figure out something from the level of the gut or the level of the heart or whatever. And I know, Dennis, you think that's a difference. And maybe the level of, well, if the two are different, then the gut is more of a fear response and the heart is more of a love response. But I think that for the most part, when people talk about the gut making decisions, they kind of mean this general sort of solar plexus heart kind of area. You know what I mean? Not necessarily like,
Well, I can
see it.
describe this from my own experience because I used to have this when I was signing contracts and stuff like that. And I would have this gut response like, "Ugh, something wrong here. I don't know exactly what it is, but there's something wrong." And I would step back. I wouldn't do anything. Like if I'm signing some contract or if I'm creating a circumstance, I would, essentially just step back and think about what are the questions that come to mind that haven't been answered or that I need to ask, and then that's where I would start, and I would might go across the table with the person that I'm negotiating with, and I'd say, hold on a second here, are you happy with this contract? Because I don't, I have a feeling that something's wrong here, and then they might say, no, everything's fine, everything's fine. And I'll be like, are you sure about this? Did you check your numbers? Is this or that? And then before long, I mean, probably 2 or 3 questions in, you go like, yeah, I am a little bit concerned about this.
Yeah.
And then next thing you know, we're like onto a new discussion, and it's like, okay, let's take care of that. And then when I get back to that point of signing, it's like, okay, I'm ready to sign,
Yeah, and that there's a
and we're good to
distinctive
go.
there is a distinctive difference though, between the gut and between the heart, and I think you described it very well. And it can be, that logically, wow, this is perfect, and I don't know, he's promising me this and that, and everything is just fine, and all my dreams come true, blah, 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 and you go for it full, and everything like makes sense on a logical, uh, on a psychological standpoint, everything is just fine, but your gut like deep down screams, something is wrong, and you can't see it, but you know it, at a different level, and that's different from the heart. That the
Hmm.
heart brings in, it is, I'm not saying it's less important, it, like, all of them have their importance, but the gut and the heart, for me, that's two distinctively different things. And gut doesn't mean necessarily only fear. Yeah, like from an evolutionary standpoint, like the roots, the gut energy that is called in, like at the bottom of the spine, and the centers, the lower centers, those root us in physicality. But also that doesn't make us, more or less. It's not to judge, but it's just, one, those are just level, like physical levels of our being. And fear is part of that, but it's only part. It's not all fear just because it's in the gut. That's not how I see it.
You're probably right. I was just wondering, you know. But yeah, the emotional guidance scale. So it's this thing, you can look it up online. It's super simple, and it has all of the different emotions. And so, because sometimes when we're trying to shift our emotions, or shift the way we feel about something, right? We might we might feel desperation, or we might feel sadness, right? And it doesn't mean we have to go against what we feel or whatever, but just to brings us, like, elevate us back up into some higher vibrations and stuff. um Sometimes, if you say, even with a child like Luca, for example, Dennis, right? He's having a bad day, he's really, really upset, and you just want him to be happy. But from being really, really upset to being happy, there's like a big jump, it's like big leap, right? So we can guide ourselves from sad to happy by step guidance, right? And that's what you're probably teaching your children to, like, okay, feel the sadness, but then, feel some gratitude, or feel some appreciation, or try to see it from different points of view, so that you can shift that desperation into something different, into action that takes you away from what you don't like and towards whatever works for you. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
The emotional guidance scale you're talking about, is that the David Hawkins map of consciousness, or is that a different one?
It's similar. I think it's a Esther and Jerry Hicks one. It's, and all the emotions are in like a big line from the
Like
heaviest
a
to the lightest.
like a spiral?
There are different graphics for it. You can find different things. Sometimes it's a
Okay.
spiral, but it's like just moving from the heavy emotions to lighter ones, as you can guide yourself, instead of trying to push yourself from like angry to happy in one leap. And you can sometimes just observe the emotional guidance scale and feel inside you how you're shifting, how, say, there is something that happens and makes you really upset for whatever reason. And then, you can go through the different emotions to go back up to, you know,
So, like we touched on that chart. Was it week before last? I don't have it in front of me right now. Do you do you see a distinction, in between those different levels, between, let's say, the gut, the heart, and the mind, energy, or levels, or states? I think we can describe it best there. And there is Albert Einstein who says the intuitive mind is a sacred gift and the rational mind is a faithful servant. We have created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift. And I think that's really fitting to our topic today. And if you go back to the beginning of the show where we highlighted the problems, it's because it's mixed up, basically. And if I'm trying to bring back the chart that you touched upon, is there a reflection in the states on the chart where you could say, oh yeah, okay, those feelings are more rooted in the physicality, on the lower levels, and then the higher the chart goes, the more elevating, or the more lighter, and the more, how would you say, enlightening the
expansive.
descriptions, expansive, the feelings or the scale describes the different states that we can achieve.
Well, honestly, I would pitch, in regard to uh, talking about the solution in this way. I think one of the things is certainly journaling, by writing stuff down and taking that opportunity to kind of go through your experiences in a way that you can kind of delineate what happened when, and then try and proactively approach the circumstance, so then when that situation occurs again, you can kind of go through it a little bit slower and observe each of the stages that you go through, so that when those kind of things come up, you can be a little bit more discerning. And each time you go through it, you're going to get a little bit better at being more discerning. And to me, that is one of the effective things about journaling, is kind of creating that opportunity to be more observant, and then kind of create that process that you go through and walk through it, so that as you go through it more and more times, you develop a new practice that becomes much more intuitive and thoughtful and meaningful to you, so that you do come to a better outcome. And certainly some of those things, when you do start to detect your intuitive side, or you feel like you're detecting your intuitive side, it is one of those things where you can examine it, because we do have conditioned responses to a lot of things, probably thousands, maybe even millions of things in our head that have been conditioned. And so the things that have been, I would say, the things that you might want to scrutinize the most are the things that you hear the most from the media. And so when it comes to particular things that are going on, like at the moment, we know what the media is focusing on. So those things are probably the most necessary to be scrutinizing of.
So adding to that, how can we use journaling to to better be able to discern between whether our mind, or our ego, or whether our gut is actually talking to us? And I would suggest that, maybe one of the first exercises could be, you just, sit quietly and you remember situations in your life where you, just like earlier, Mike, like I could feel when you were talking about, oh, like I felt this in my gut, and like, oh, like you were remembering, like I could see you seeing lively that situation in front of you. So those are like powerful moments. Those are like marking moments in our lives. So bring up some of those marking moments in your life where you felt your gut strongly telling you, "Mm-mm, don't do this," or yes, yes, that's your thing, whatever it is, and write about that. And then through that, maybe come back tomorrow, or you come back like next week, and write a little more. You remember like a few more facts and a few more details, and then you go back into that moment, and you just and by that you learn to identify, oh, what was happening, what went through my mind, and what did I feel, and what did I witness on the outside and on the inside, and just expand upon that. And I feel that is a great exercise to, because right now it's like, oh, but the God, I don't know, is it the God, is it the pain, whatever, like I have no idea. But I'm sure you'll find a few situations, at least in your life, where you had that strong, that knowing that goes beyond just the brain, logical thinking, and that knowing that something is like this or something is like that, and just expand on that and write on that and journal upon that and see what happens. And I think it will help you to connect back to that feeling and to identify it. And if you have once you have identified the clues and the signs that your body, and those might be unique, like my signs might be, way different from your signs, Agnieszka or Mike. But once we have identified our very own clues, then those, we can anchor those, and we can make those triggers. So every time the sign comes up or it starts to come, it's like, oh, put my attention, put your attention on that, because I'm getting a message right here, I'm getting a feeling, and like I'm gonna listen to that, because that's and every time I listened to it in the past, things went good and things went right, and I was in flow. And so highlight, just use that to bring awareness to it.
That just happened to me this month. I started working for a new client, and then as soon as the contract started, I started feeling this like real tightness in my gut, and I was like, oh, and I couldn't start working for them. Like I just felt dread. And I was like, it's a new contract. I don't even know these people. Like, why do I feel dread? And what is it? And I tried to look up the company and see what it was, and then I don't know. And I ended up backing out of the contract, right at the beginning. I didn't even log any hours. I just like couldn't even get started. But I remembered like at one point that my decision was made because I was sitting there thinking, why can't I start this? Why can't I start? Am I being lazy? Am I being picky? Like, what's my problem with these people, right? And then I remembered having the same kind of tightness in my stomach a couple of years ago when I was working for this guy who turned out to be um, not very beneficial to society. His projects were kind of vapid, and projects were vapid, and he was like basically not doing anything positive or good. It was basically taking money from people for stupid shit and not worth it. You know what I mean? And I couldn't bring myself to work on that project. And so these projects that are not valuable to society always make me feel kind of sick to my stomach. And so I don't know. And so this time I backed out. I listened. I didn't question it. I don't know.
Well, I definitely think that's the final step here is really talking about the benefits of actually accomplishing this. And I do feel like you know I I will say that like one of the biggest kind of gut reactions that I didn't listen to was when I was 17 years old and I signed the contract for the military. And I said, yeah, I'm gonna be in the military. And I like my gut was like going, no, don't do it. It's a prison sentence. And I was just like, I'm an adult now. I can make my own decision. And I went and I signed it. And then, so like having that experience where I spent like 9 years regretting that decision, it was one in which I taught myself really well, listen to your gut. And
There's a
then when it
movie
came
about
to,
that, It's called Starship Troopers. Exactly what you're describing.
okay. Well, the thing is when I got to the point that I was, like in that contract situation, it solved so many problems for me because I was, at times I was doing like a ton of more work than most of the project managers in my office. And I had nowhere near the problems. Like the amount of lawsuits that the other project managers had in regard to like disputes and stuff like that, and litigations and mediations and all this kind of thing. They were dealing with this kind of stuff almost every day, almost every week. They had those kind of things, and that was probably one of the reasons that they didn't do as much work as I did, because I didn't have any of those problems. And to me, that's one of the greatest benefits of all, especially in that particular job. But I think when it comes to like doing the things that like go against your principles, that can weigh so heavily on your energy towards like doing the things that you want to do. And in a lot of cases people like suffer through those things, and it creates a lot of sleepless nights and all that kind of stuff. When I sleep great because I don't have that problem, and I don't know, what do you guys think about that? What benefits do you see when it comes to utilizing your intuition?
Let Aristotle tell us. Intuition is the source of scientific knowledge. Is scientific knowledge not a benefit, a huge benefit? And if it's true what he says, that intuition is actually the source of that, that's really amazing. And
Wait, so what does that mean for modern science? It's dead? It was never alive to begin with?
well, the certain science I would actually I would question. I'm not sure if Aristotle was talking about certain scientific knowledge, or let's say scientific, like things that are sold to us as scientific knowledge that we hear about today, because I think there's a lot of discernment that needs to be used nowadays to between true science and between maybe something more that's like more in the realms of belief. um,
And the weirdest part about that sentence is that every single person you ask will believe something different what true science means. It's one of those words that means something different to everyone, which is weird because most people think that their definition is universal, but most people's definitions aren't, or
if you
nobody's
if you relate
definitions.
what Aristotle said though to what Einstein said, it gets really interesting, because Einstein, and I'm paraphrasing here, is basically saying that his his knowing did not come from knowing here, but it came basically from the gut. So it is a knowing that goes beyond that what he would have learned in his books. And I think that's kind of the direction where Aristotle was hinting at as well with his quote.
I think you could also point at Tesla as being one of the guys that was very intuitive. I
Mhm.
mean, pretty much developed the modern electrical system and created the circumstance where electricity could be utilized the way that we see it today. And then the radio and everything else, the cell phones and all that kind of stuff, those were all intuitive creations that came from Tesla. And to some degree, I think, it's been a bad downward trend of road with science ever since, because I think like the economy that we are currently living within is primarily based on Tesla's ideas. And we really haven't stepped into the next level. I mean, the technocrats will tell you we're into the
But
fourth industrial revolution, but
now
it's
we have to
really
talk
that
about
they're
education. Because
okay.
basically what happened is we had liberal education that was really comprehensive, and people were able to, after like a basic liberal education, people like Newton were able to become scientists in many different areas, versus now humanity is subjected to education that dumbs us down, fosters rote memorization and blind obedience to certain ideas, and it does not foster creativity, independent thinking, or research in the true sense of it. Research these days means copying other people's work, which is ridiculous because some people have even the wrong conclusion on their own research paper. Like if you read the research paper and read the actual data versus the conclusion doesn't match the data. That's the craziest thing I've ever seen. So now you can't even trust the conclusions on research papers. You actually have to read the freaking paper. It's ridiculous.
But the
Yeah.
word itself, research, says it already. It's to to go back to search over something that other people have searched before. So that's not necessarily original in that sense,
That's
right?
it. I'm never using that word again. It's dead to me.
Anyhow, hold on. I lost my train of thought. There is, oh, what I was gonna go at is the you touched upon education and relating education to intuition. Education to me, that is primarily, that's the mind, right? Educating the mind, um, or or miseducating, or how did we say it earlier, like hijacking it with Netflix and so. But that is all the mind, and if the when the mind is loud, then you can't hear that you can't hear the intuition. Intuition speaks very, it speaks slow and calmly. And if the mind is screaming in all over the place, then how are you going to hear? How are you going to be able to listen to your intuition? And so, in order to be able to listen to intuition, to your, which all of us have really, feel a prerequisite is that the mind has to be quiet. And by calming the mind and by calming those waves, the ups and downs of the mind, and by getting how you say, by taking the reins and guiding the mind, you allow intuition to speak to you, or to speak at a level that you're actually able to perceive and to hear it, to be able to listen to it. And there is one other quote which was saying, let me see, who was it? Oh, that was Wayne Dyer. He said, if prayer is you talking to God, then intuition is God talking to you.
That's a good one.
The question then is, are we listening? Or can we even listen with Netflix on at volume level 10? And what is your Netflix? My Netflix might be different from yours. What is my distraction? What are the things that we let ourselves be distracted by, or occupy our mind with? And I think, education is important and has its place as well, as all the other things have as well. But then it's just a question of who's in charge, right? Yeah, like is our mind, our mental center, is that in charge? Is that supposed to be in charge? What about our heart? What about our gut? Is it supposed to be one of those centers to lead and to take charge, or is it the three of them in unison? And how can we harmonize them? How can we put bring them together?
Yeah, I've heard this a couple times, and I think Shambhavi brought this to my attention, and then somebody else, one of my friends, Leanne, she also described this kind of deciding process where she thinks about the idea, but then she kind of digests the idea, and it kind of goes through the kind of that line through your heart and into your stomach, and kind of feels the feelings that come about, and then she makes a conclusion as far as a decision whether she's going to do something or not. And I think that is certainly something that, like, just by kind of going through and maybe that's a mental exercise where you're just kind of taking the time to consider and visualize that decision going through your heart and into your stomach, and possibly throughout the whole chakra, kind of all the elements there.
System.
But I do feel like that is a great visualization exercise that I think is useful in making bigger decisions.
So how much did you guys hear of what I said before I got so rudely interrupted by my internet?
I don't think we heard anything.
No, you just quietly disappeared.
You just disappeared.
You just left us alone.
No, because I was saying when you were talking about like quieting the mind, Dennis, and stuff, I'm like, now Mike needs to get in with his journaling segment where he talks about how through the power of journaling, you suspend the disbelief, you suspend the chatter in the mind as you write and write and write and write, to at a certain point you get to that automatic writing level, and that's when the mind's no longer interfering with your intuition. That's what I was saying that you should say. So go, or they already say it.
I didn't say that, but I do feel like it is also kind of a conversation with your subconscious mind, or what I would consider my subconscious mind. But it is kind of a meditative process where I take the time on particular days to do that. And, it does come out in writing, and it usually comes out in different forms of writing. Like sometimes the writing is different, and I know that it's from somewhere else other than my mind, or maybe it's I don't know. I don't want to get too woo woo in that regard, but
you don't have to.
Why not? I thought we broke all the barriers for this show. There's no more limitations. You can get as woo as you want. Go for it.
Think about somebody who's world famous and well known for his intellectual capacities. You know him.
Tesla,
You've heard of him. Tesla? No, not Tesla. The other one.
I
Einstein.
was
There we
whenever I
go.
think of
Einstein.
Walt.
Einstein.
Einstein.
So let's use him because he's known for his intellectual capacities, right? He's famous for that, and he himself says the only real valuable thing is intuition. The intellect has little to do on the road to discovery.
Wait, so now that's both Aristotle and Einstein telling us that intuition is the answer to everything, and we're still trying to follow the schoolmaster with a big stick? Seriously?
Yeah, so we should probably spend a little more time on intuition, huh?
Yeah, and we should probably
I was thinking that next
research
week we should talk about
those.
myth.
We should probably research those guys who have been who wrote being rooted and being centered in intuition and not on the intellectual level only. Because if you
But they were
research those, then you're
smart
gonna be stuck on that
guys.
level.
Those two
I would,
guys, Einstein and Aristotle, they were smart, in like successful dudes. Sorry, Michael, go.
well, I was going to say somebody that really got totally blasted out of the world and his books got burned and everything else was Wilhelm Reich. And boy, if you look into his stuff, uh, he's definitely got some interesting thoughts that probably are very intuitive, and probably a lot of people probably think, yeah, that's probably right. But man, the man don't like him at all. And to me, that suggests that there's something there that might be valuable.
Yeah, I couldn't encourage people more to dig him up from whether it's about early childhood, pre-birth, armoring of the body. He was a friend, early friend of Freud as well. But then afterwards, their opinions differed quite a bit. And then from like I said, from early childhood to chemtrail busters, organ energy. It's amazing. Sexuality. His research is yeah, wow, it's quite something to get into.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot, and of course, there's a lot that's very controversial and taboo. So that's definitely one I would look into a little bit more. But we are closing in on the time frame. We've definitely probably put in an hour. I know we had a little bit of a technical difficulty starting off, so we're probably right at the hour at this point. We certainly appreciate our audience's time and attention. Do we have any final comments from the audience? Has anybody
Um,
asked any questions?
Shamba, we
Or
have
have
been
we just
active.
totally like blown their minds and they're just sitting in awe of all the information that we've just dispensed?
All the intuition. No, no, Shambhavi has been giving us laughing faces from early on, and is there a clapping hand and the ego comment, but nothing afterwards.
Okay,
But
wonderful.
yeah, let's see about
Well,
next
with
week.
that, then we've got our next teaser coming up on Monday. Be sure to check that out. We do a little bit of, for those of you that are involved in autonomy, you can actually be involved in our kind of design process for the meeting, because we do that kind of live on Discord, and we invite those that are
In a
interested to
dojo room.
contribute. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I definitely think that's an area that we could explore even more, as far as getting people to contribute to the ideas that we bring about this. But so far, it's been something that I really find very interesting. I love the way that we're producing this show nowadays, and I think it's a little bit more exciting and hopefully more useful for people that are listening.
And of course, always
You
looking
guys got
forward to
anything?
feedback, via the comments as well. Comment under the videos or on Facebook if you can and want. And yeah, guide us and steer the directions that we go into, because we're open to go, many ways. And if we can help, or if you see any potential, covering grounds on a certain topic, then let us know and comment and continue to listen. Thank you very much for your time.
We love comments, even if Dennis doesn't always get to them.
All right. Well, with that said, I guess that's our cue to sign off. Thank you so much again, everybody.
Thanks for listening.
Check out our website.